very special podcast on Black History Month, and the theme is Saluting Our Sisters. So in this episode, we are joined by Hashiat Sambo, a GP trainee, and Lucy, our ICB colleague, talks to us about, well, working twice as hard to get half as far. And we have reflections from the panel.
Hello everyone, I'm Hashiat Sambo. I'm currently a GP trainee, ST3 in Nottingham, East Midlands. Also doing a fellowship role, so training 60% and then 40% in fellowship, working with differential attainment amongst IMGs particularly. So I think bringing into perspective generally my own experience as an IMG and hoping to see how we can sort of help things around. Nice to meet everyone.
So Hashiat, we were just talking about how the theme of this month, Saluting Our Sisters, how it when you heard about it, how did it make you feel? So, was there, what emotions came through? Did it make you feel anything? What was your take on it when you realized that the theme was going to be Saluting Our Sisters?
I found it interesting, and I was quite happy that someone was sort of putting a little bit of spotlight into the sisters, I would say, of color, because I think, I'm not even sure that's the right term, but I'm learning these terms because I am Nigerian, and I would say probably growing up in Nigeria, I had that privilege of not noticing that there was something different about someone like myself, because, you're surrounded by similar people and like similar colors. So I think it took coming here to realize I'm a bit different, and I have people who are different as myself, and sometimes you have to sort of work a bit harder to make an impression, show who you are, and get people to recognize you. So it's a breath of fresh air to see like people with like minds and seeing how they're being recognized for what they're doing. And I think one of the things I've noticed as well sometimes is it tends to be a bit tunneled as seeing maybe people you see generally either be nurses and that's it, and then you don't meet other like professions. So it's really nice to see like people doing other things and getting to meet them and getting to hear about them. So it's good.
So isn't that incredible? Even though you weren't part of this prior to that, that's literally the discussion that we've been having. And I think that shared feeling, I mean, it's that's massive. So actually something really interesting that Lucy said to me when we first met was, and you've just picked up on it as well, having to work twice as hard to get half as far. Is that what you said? That was what, or
it is what I said, and I would still say it. And actually, and that makes you twice as tired as well, because that's a lifelong thing. That people that and I don't not this. I don't just say this about me. I say this about people that I meet, people that I work with. That they're that we need to recognise that. And again, I don't want to sound, but it's a struggle, isn't it? And it's a great one. I don't think it's a fight. I think it's a struggle, but it's hard, isn't it? And it is that kind of metaphorical. You're always pushing against that door, banging your head against the glass ceiling as both women and women of colour. And therefore, when you get there or wherever there may be, and I think that's an interesting thing, where where are we all aiming to get? You maybe don't have. You're always having to refresh your energy, aren't you? And if you look at the person next to you who may not be on the same journey as you, it's always, how do I keep fresh? How do I keep? So I very much.
That really resounded with me. Because again, as a woman of colour, I was like, my goodness, you've literally summed it up. Yes, that's exactly it. And why is it that we have to work that bit harder? Because actually we're obviously just as capable. So what, you talked about being twice as tired, but actually going back to what Liz said was that self-motivation. Your self-motivation has to be twice as much. So what gives you that energy? Where do you take it from? Because if you talk, we've spoken about role models and those people of inspiration. If you can't find them, if you don't see them ahead of you, what is it that motivates you?
Being the first of anything is always exciting. That motivates me. People like Michelle Obama, being the first of anything generally is quite motivating. So that's where I draw my motivation from. But it is quite exhausting, like Lucy said, because just to get that little recognition, you have to do so much more. And even when you do, it feels bittersweet, because it's almost like a microaggression as well for someone to be like, oh, you are quite good. Like, okay, so what did you think of me before? But you are happy that you still got that recognition, but you almost feel a little bit insulted as well. That what were you thinking of me before? So that even makes you also work even harder, because you don't know what people's perceptions of you are or were. So you have to keep at it.
I think there's two frames to that, and I would agree when your original question, Errum, about what motivates you. Actually, sometimes it's been it's been people that you wouldn't expect that have motivated me, because they have either promoted me or supported me. And I've almost said, what, you mean me? And they say, yeah, I do mean. And it's like, I didn't have, and I'm sort of like, well, don't I have to prove myself a bit more? But occasionally you do. And the metaphor I always use, that as you go through your life and your career, I think as a black woman, it's choppy seas and there's always somebody pushing you under the water. But every so often, and I think it's happened to me 2 or 3 times, actually somebody puts their hand in and says, come on, you can do this, get out. And to me, that is hugely, hugely motivating, because I think it's the reverse of you take nothing for granted, do you? So when you get there and you've had to get that bit further, and somebody that you respect recognises, I think you get a lot. I think many people are probably just driven by pure ambition. It's a promotion, it's more money. Actually, for me, it's been, gosh, kind of, I did that, and and it sounds very, but it's a kind of sense of, it actually gives you quite an internal motivation. And I would also say that when you do have to work that bit harder, you do have to be that bit more focused. You don't get distracted by the things that a lot of other people get distracted by, the politics, well, who's it? I sort of think, I just want to get this job done, and I want to do it as well as I can, because I've got to work hard. And actually, all those other things that if I had kind of time and space and took more things for granted, I might be troubled by. You can
block them out,
tune them out, can't you? And that's in its own way is quite liberating, actually. I think. And I think that is the flip side of the kind of the struggle, the constant proving yourself. But just being careful that actually for all of you, we don't feel grateful, because you haven't qualified in particularly the professions you're in, because you haven't worked hard. So we don't need to feel grateful. We just need to be proud of what we've done, and maybe that extra bit more proud, because it's the choppier waters we have to navigate.
So again, we'll pick up on that. So in itself, that feeling of inspiration through recognition, how have people? So it's about allyship as well. So if we don't have people, so for example, we're talking about Black women. So if you don't have Black women as role models who can almost, what we talk about is leaving the door open or ensuring that you give something back. When within your workspaces, have you found allyship easy? Have you found that there are people that are trying to, not necessarily help you up the ladder, because it's that whole thing, it's that acknowledgement of actually it's a lot of hard work as well. It's not just because someone's, brought you up. But do you feel as if you have people within your workspaces that have allowed you to prosper, have allowed you to be recognized for the good work that you have been able to contribute? Or do you feel that there is just this constant barrier?
I think the difficulty is, isn't it? And particularly with the focus on equality and diversity, people don't like to actually. Nobody's ever said to. I'm sure you all. I work with people who are very supportive, and you do get recognition. My colleagues on the Integrated Care Board, are all very supportive. But I think on a more day-to-day level, people don't want to say, actually, well done, because that can't have been easy, because that's almost recognise. They don't want to recognise. People don't have the language, do they? Absolutely. They'd rather not talk about it. They'd rather go, well, look, we're completely colourblind. We wouldn't mind. Well, but and again, I'm so people. So I think it's people do find it hard, and I very much found in the depths of COVID, when we had the whole Black Lives Matter issues, which I know personally for me as well, kind of almost, and without wishing to be over dramatic, it kind of ignited trauma that I didn't know I'd felt, because you don't want to admit that you live in a world where this sort of thing could happen. And I think I've always made an effort to kind of sail on through and kind of deal with the world in which I operate, and think, not, but actually when it happened, nobody really wanted to talk about it, did they? It was, and I think there is something about people just having the language to say, how did that,
how did it make you feel?
How did it? We got into a lot of form filling and box ticking. What are you doing? We know that. I mean, the stats tell you, don't they? The BAME Race Health Observatory. The data tells you that BAME people experienced far greater health inequalities, and that was exacerbated in COVID. So, but we're also worried about putting a differential focus on that population. That we don't talk about it, do we? And we talk about equality and diversity. So I think for me, I get a huge amount of support, and I do. I think that is about who I am and what I am, about who I am and what I do, not what I am. But I equally find people find it really hard to talk about the context in which we all operate, for fear of causing offence, or by just recognising it is a bad thing. I think that's probably what I'm trying to. You can recognise it, and it doesn't make it a bad thing.
I will say, I remember in my previous role, when the BLM movement was going on, I had a person in leadership that couldn't bring themselves to use the word Black because they thought I would be offended by it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just looked at them like, no, but I am Black though. I don't know what's offensive about that. You are just stating facts. Yeah, like what's offensive about it? And they're like, oh, but would you rather? So then it became a whole conversation about language. Would you rather be referred to as colored? And I was like, as far as you acknowledge me as a person and refer to me, I don't see the issue with it.
Just Elizabeth, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could call me Elizabeth, but I'm Elizabeth. I'm a woman and I'm Black. They are all facts. Like, just because you can refer to, I mean, nothing is gonna change if you refer to me by as far as in substance, we're talking about the same thing. But people do get a bit I think being like politically correct and trying not to be offensive as well. Which sometimes is a bit tricky. I suppose it's a bit tricky because you get too tight, like you get two people on different spectrums. The ones where are overly friendly,
right,
and try to use the slangs.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I still don't know what you mean. And then the ones that just like try to speak like try to be politically correct with their terminologies and the way they present things. But yeah, I mean, I would say the current role I'm in is quite diverse. There are people from diverse backgrounds. So it is very, this is probably the most comfortable I've ever been at any point in my career. Purely because, not necessarily because the people around me that look like me, but the people around me that don't look like the norm.
Yeah. Right. So it's that celebrating of diversity, isn't it? It's, and it was so interesting because I think one of the things I was trying to get to when I was talking about actually role models is you don't have to. My role model is not an Asian woman, and it doesn't have to be. I find so it's Liz, you mentioned Michelle Obama. My goodness, she's a role model. Like she's someone who I aspire to be like. Just the way that she holds herself, the way that she, despite being in such a position of leadership, can be so grounded and can vocalize and verbalize those real kind of grassroots issues that some people really shy away from. And she's like, well, actually, no, this is, this is, and we just need to address it the way that it is. And I think one of the other things that I really relate to. So I came from a very, very humble background. So, massive family. Mum didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mum. Dad worked as a waiter initially. And lots of people, I think, as I was growing, I used to shy away from that and be like, oh, I don't really want anyone to know that. And that journey to being a doctor, because it felt like you had to prove yourself and you had to be just as good and have just as many toys and have just as many holidays as everybody else. But really, that's not true. Actually, my self-motivation comes from my parents' journey. We talked about actually having to have twice as much self-motivation. And yes, I'm not a Black woman, but again, being a woman of color, my goodness, yeah, you have to have twice as much motivation. And I definitely get that from the journey I came through just to be where I am now. And when I talk about holding that door open, actually everything that I do, I hold myself accountable also, because I feel as if I'm a representative of Asian women now, or specifically of Muslim women. So I feel as if I have to, make sure, Lucy, as you were saying, that you're ticking all the boxes, you're making sure that actually you're doing everything right. You don't get involved in all the extra stuff because you don't want to say the wrong thing and you don't want other people to get the wrong impression. It is so tiring. It is so difficult. But but you turn up to work every day and you do it again.
And that brings us to the end of episode 2. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Join us again next time, where we talk a bit more about who the inspiring women in our panel's lives have been.